we talked about the purpose of the prologue there. Hopefully you could see kind of it's was serving as just a setup for character. Yeah.
Awesome.
So now where are we going, Robbie?
Oh, Adam?
Yeah, okay.
Just really quickly, is I do Weston in here? Excellent.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Thanks to all the library staff. Can you hear me okay? Yes? Yeah, you can. Okay. Thanks to all the library staff for helping out and setting everything up. You've been great. I'm just going to read, not poetry, but part of an essay. I guess all you have to really know about this essay is that it's part of a larger project where I think about this 19th century Jewish agricultural colony in Colorado called Cotopaxi. And I visit the archive and I think about the relationship, I guess, of my own family and my own story and the stories of those of my family to what happened to those people in Cotopaxi, Colorado. This is a story I've told forever. My great-grandfather dies, leaving his wife Celia with 3 small children, Jake, Shimmy, and Sam. He dies 1 year after my grandfather's birth. It is 1919, leaving my great-grandmother to raise a family alone. They live in Springfield, Massachusetts. At this point in the story, the United States government has banned the manufacture and sale of alcoholic beverages. It is the prohibition. Celia, my great-grandmother, becomes a bootlegger. In this story, my grandfather, Jake Fagin, is fatherless. His mother makes whiskey in the bathtub. He's told this one before. When I ask him to repeat it, he does, but there's nothing to tell. Jake and his brothers deliver the whiskey to kitchen dives, makeshift bars in nearby homes and apartments. The cops turn a blind eye, I'm told. As my grandfather, child of 8 or 9, passes through the neighborhood, banned substance in hand, an Irish cop says the Yiddish words meaning carry it in good health, acknowledging his labor in moral, if not legal terms. My great-grandfather's name was Wolf. He owned a grocery store in Springfield, Massachusetts. His American name was William. He died of an illness which today could be easily cured. What kind of person was he? The kind, says Jake, who gives food to those who can't afford it. Sound like anyone? My grandfather asks. Meaning he believes, though he's never owned a grocery store in Springfield, Massachusetts, though he has no memory of his father, he shares this quality of kindness with the man. In my version of the story, there's a photograph. This photo hangs on my grandfather's wall. It's of his mother, father, and 2 brothers, Sam and Shimmy, who's just a baby. Wearing a white gown, Shimmy hovers in ghostly maternal embrace. I'm haunted by this expression, which I'll call devout. His eyes are deep and penetrating. He seems to know something about me I've yet to understand as he stares ahead with preternatural calm. I feel observed in the religious sense, that my life is a ceremony through which this gaze moves. I feel this even when I'm away from the image, even when I've forgotten it exists. My grandfather is absent from the photo. He wasn't born yet. In my mind, his absence is joined with the figure of his dad. This is the picture's second ghostly embrace. 2 souls touching in a time that never was. When I ask Jake what he sees in the picture, he says, let's face it, I didn't have a father. This is not God seeing. This is a foundational vision of loss that's dwelling place is the image. With every look, he returns in his refused entry, re-encountering the distance between them. In this way, Jake's father's absence is present. In this way, homelessness is home. I understand this last part as I investigate the story of Cotopaxi. When more than 60 Russian Jewish refugees arrived in 1882 to create an agricultural colony, instead of the houses they'd been promised, they find 8 rudely constructed cabins, about 16 by 20 or smaller, double boarded with tar paper. In other words, the settlers rediscovered their homelessness, which must seem built into the hidden architecture of history, geography, and time. The word hide, both noun and verb, is among the etymological associations for the word house. The first, the skin of an animal tanned into leather, denotes a covering. The second, the verb, means concealment. If a story is a covering for the events it describes, it conceals as it reveals. Narrative is a shelter, but a porous one. Which word is a leaky window, in which a creaking door? It can be hard to tell what's hidden in the telling and what's exposed, whether one is building that house on a hill or dismantling it brick by brick. I'll end there. Thanks.
Me. All right. So I was going to read chapter 1 of Potion Masters, but I don't do a lot of readings because I don't like my voice. But when my wife reads my books or something, I'm like, oh, that sounds good. When I read, I'm like, this sounds stupid. But I shouldn't say that on camera. Dang it. So I thought I would read a chapter that was actually this is the first thing I ever wrote or thought about when I created Potion Masters. A lot of kids ask me, what was the idea that sparked it? And this was the scene that I wrote. And it's actually chapter 5. Okay. So bear with me. I'm not a great reader. Here we go. The delicious aroma of chicken cacciatore wafted through the kitchen as Gordy's mother removed the casserole dish from the oven. It was Monday evening, and Mrs. Stitzer had returned home from her most recent trip, early for once. The Stitzer family gathered around the dining room table, staring at a mason jar. Normally, Mrs. Stitzer decorated with flowers or fruit or scented candles, but not tonight. This mason jar had been sealed with a brass ring and contained a human tongue. Saliva moistened the glass as the tongue flicked and rolled. Each time it performed a trick, one of the twins burst into laughter. "Make it whistle!" Isaac reached across the table for the jar. Gordy promptly slapped his hand away. "He can't make it whistle." "Why not?" Jessica asked. Gordy stared at his father, sitting at the head of the table, with his lips pursed tightly together, because it has to be in his mouth to do that. Gordy's dad forced a smile. And he asked, which made absolutely no sense at all to Gordy. The twins snickered, but Gordy felt bad for his dad. He looked so uncomfortable. "I'm so sorry, dear," Gordy's mom announced from the kitchen. "It'll be over soon. Just 5 more minutes, I promise. You're being such a good sport." His dad rolled his eyes. "Ord." Gordy's dad had agreed to allow Mrs. Stitzer to try out a new potion on him. It was supposed to render him completely silent, but as the Stitzers soon discovered, simply not having a tongue in one's mouth did not make one quiet. Wanda Stitzer carried in a piping hot casserole dish with her black oven mitts. A pleasant smell followed her into the room. "Careful, it's really hot." Instead of placing the dish on the hot pad at the center of the table, she lowered it in front of Gordy and wafted the steam toward his nostrils. "Decipher," she instructed. Gordy nodded and inhaled the aroma of tomatoes, poultry, and bow-tie pasta. He caught hints of oregano and garlic, but also something foreign. "Is that bloodroot?" he asked. His mother beamed. "Yes, what else?" Gordy knew bloodroot could be used to make someone throw up, but why would his mom want that to happen at the dinner table? Isaac drummed his fingers on the table impatiently. "Can we eat now?" Mrs. Stitzer ignored Isaac and smiled at Gordy, showing all her teeth, hinting at the answer. Jessica's hand shot into the air. "Oh, I know, you put teeth in it." "Teeth?" Isaac whined. "Why do we have to eat teeth?" "It's not teeth, dear," Mrs. Stitzer said, though it wouldn't have been the first time a molar had snuck its way into a meal. Gordy snapped his fingers. "Seal bone powder." "Well done," she cheered, finally setting the dish on the table. "What's bone powder have to do with teeth?" Jessica asked. "A potion made of bloodroot and the bones from an Arctic seal makes you want to brush your teeth. Potion master dentists used it all the time 100 years ago," Gordy said. "And it still works." His mom ladled servings of the meal onto everyone's plate. "I'm very proud of you, Gordy. I've said this many times before, but I have never seen anyone with your natural talent at deciphering. It takes most illiterators years to master the skill, and yet you're so young and so good." Gordy ducked his head, embarrassed by the praise. Isaac and Jessica rolled their eyes at each other. The twins perhaps had a future in potion making, but for the time being, they were far too impatient and stubborn to practice. Eyeing his meal eagerly, but without a tongue to assist in swallowing, Gordy's dad held up his hands in frustration. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Gordon." Mrs. Stitzer pulled a small spray bottle from her apron pocket and lightly spritzed her husband's mouth. The tongue disappeared from the jar with a flashing pop. Finally, Gordy's dad worked his tongue around in his mouth. Remind me never to agree to that again. Come now, Wanda said, reaching over and caressing her husband's cheek. Where would I be without my hero? Now, what's on everyone's schedules this week? She pulled out her smartphone. I have a sales meeting on Thursday evening, Gordy's dad announced. Wanda clucked her tongue. I'm leaving Thursday for a convention, and I have to be at the airport no later than 4 o'clock. Mr. Stitzer slurped his drink. That's a problem. My meeting with the Western Garbage Disposal Union starts at 4:30. That's nowhere near the airport. She narrowed her eyes and quickly thumbed a message in her online counter. Fine, I'll take a taxi again. No, I'll drop you off, Mr. Stitzer said, his mouth crammed with pasta and sauce. I can be a little late. It's only garbage disposals. Mrs. Stitzer sighed and smiled. Thank you, dear. It will be nice to save a bit of money. Taxi fares are bleeding our savings dry. But I do want my Subaru back sometime this year. How long is this procedure, Mr. Stitzer made air quotes, going to take? Just 1 more week, and life will be back to normal, she insisted. So Thursday looks to be jam-packed, Gordy's dad said. What with my meeting and your convention, and of course that thing you're planning on taking Gordy to Thursday morning. Gordy had been absently absorbing the mundane conversation of weekly schedules while scarfing down his dinner, but his ears perked up at his dad's mention of his name. What thing? He asked, his eyes splitting towards his parents. His dad winked at Gordy. His mom puckered her lips and scrunched her nose. Always trying to spoil the fun, aren't you, Buster? She said to her husband. Wanda exhaled and shifted her gaze to Gordy. I read in your curriculum that you can earn a significant amount of extra credit from spending some time at one of your parents' workplaces. Gordy swallowed a bite, trying not to get his hopes up. I cleared it with your principal. You'll spend half a day on Thursday with me, but you'll have some makeup work to do on Friday, she said, so nothing but studying after school, you understand? Are you serious? Gordy scooted back from the table, the chair legs chirping as he scuffed against the wooden floor. You're taking me to Brew headquarters? His mom dabbed at the corners of her mouth with a napkin before resting her hands on the table and offering Gordy the slightest of nods. Gordy leapt from his chair, hooting and hollering in delight. His mom giggled. The twins watched from their seats, their faces contorted with confusion. Now hold up, Mr. Stitzer announced, raising a finger and cutting through Gordy's raucous celebration. Gordy could very well choose to accompany me to work, Wanda. We can't just assume he's all that interested in visiting your mysterious headquarters. He needs to make his choice. Gordy stopped abruptly. Oh yeah, he said, lowering into his chair. I mean, of course I want to see where you work, Dad. He couldn't imagine having to listen to his dad yammer on and on about appliances all day long, but he didn't want to hurt his dad's feelings. Stop, Mr. Stitzer swatted his hand, snickering. I'm only kidding. Your mother's work is way more interesting than mine. Wouldn't want you to miss out on that opportunity. And Gordy smiled. Thanks, Dad. Why don't we get to go? Isaac asked. His lips were bright red from tomato sauce and no doubt speckled with traces of bloodroot. Yeah, Jessica chimed in. I want to have a day off from school. And you will when you're old enough, Gordy's mom said. But this is Gordy's time, and I think he's finally earned a chance to see where the real magic takes place. That was harder to do than I thought.
Am I clear up? M comes before us. Unless Shanan wants to go first. I don't know.
Good idea. Okay. This is from Fate's Command of the Highest Crown subseries of Cosmic Driftwood. Everyone can hear me? Okay, good. Ghislaine's breathing was quick and shallow as he stumbled, resting into one arching support of the bridge. Cypra twitched his tail, stirring the waters of the inlet. Careful, you'll need to take slow breaths. You'll only make yourself pass out. Ghislaine shuddered, pressing his back with a slouch into the support. We're going to die, Cypra. We're going to die. The squirrel rolled his eyes. The possibility of that is great, but I face death all the time. You're going to have to learn it too eventually. How about now? Ghislaine shook his head. You're used to it, and you can survive it. But I won't. I'm not an immortalum, am I? Cypra glanced to the bed of the inlet under his paws. You're right. Come here. The squirrel embraced the young otter with his free paw. It's easy for anyone to lose patience with others for what they cannot help. Even I fall into that error. Ghislaine couldn't stop a slight sob from escaping as he leaned into his mentor's scrawny chest. Cypra, what are we going to do? I'm frightened. Fear is a natural and healthy thing. It's hard, I know, but facing that fear, that is courage. The otter shook his head. I don't know that I am strong enough for all of this. Cypra inhaled slowly, tightening his hold on Ghislaine. What are you most afraid of right now, aside from death itself? Rena and Idrin are probably waiting for us right now. They might come looking, and they might find us as soon as the sun rises. Rena could die. Even if Idrin was watching us when we left, I doubt they'll find us that soon. And that presupposed that they didn't just fall asleep. They could be resting without a care or worry right now. Besides, Idrin should know better than to wander about a strange place without a guide or directions, especially at night. Ghislaine sniffled. What will happen when they find out what happened to us? Worst case scenario, they'll hear that a strange explosion happened, they'll probably search out through the rubble, and might find your body. That is, if something else like the beast you've mastered doesn't show up first. Ghislaine shook, gripping Cypra's tunic. The squirrel winced as he patted the otter's shoulders. But that's the worst case. That assumes we don't find a way out of this first. It's all right, lad. It'll be all right. No, it won't. Rena will be trapped away from home, and it'll be all my fault. Nothing's your fault, Gil. You weren't the one who set this astral bomb thingy in place. You weren't the one who found our way through the Bifrost. Technically, that part is all my doing. But I didn't listen when you told me to stay away. You're still learning. You can't be fairly expected to understand things like this thing. He motioned towards the green light, attached to Mjolnir. And you know what? I promise as one of the guardians of Valhalla, you will get your chance to tell Rena yourself. Tell Rena what? Oh, come on, don't deny it. I saw it in your face when I called her your lady friend that one night. And when you and Idrin tried to get her through that hole. You like her a lot more than a friend or a sister. Ghislaine shrugged and then nodded. I think I do. You know you do. You just don't know that you know. But how do I tell her? I saw how my sister's husband said it, but that doesn't feel right for me. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. For now, we have maybe an hour or two at most to disarm this thing. How can you? Ideally, I mean. This kind of trap takes everything into account. Even if we could throw it through a ripple or even into the Bifrost, it would detonate before it would do any good. It would take too long for me to shift away. And even if we had a stranger come along, they couldn't waltz away with it or hold it. One of us must grip it at all times. You said there were options we wouldn't take. Aye. The only way I know for certain to destroy this thing without an explosion is for one of us to die by the other's paw. So we're not doing that. How'd that even work? If it comes into contact with my grip with a lot of your blood or the other way around, it will fizzle out. The amount of blood required would be lethal. No way out then. You can't even use lightning? If I charge up, it will explode more powerfully. That might take out a few of the nearby buildings. Who uses these kinds of traps? Obviously someone desperate enough to take my Mjolnir. Wait, it could survive the explosion? It will survive everything. I made it strong. I hate useful things breaking easily, if at all. Ghislaine couldn't help but smile amid tears. Apparently baddies don't count as useful. Wait, watch it. Do you hear something? Cypra's stern expression dropped as his ears perked. He nodded slowly. You're getting better at paying attention. Who goes there? They heard the faint scurry of paws on the stones above them. Cypra called out again. It's all right. Whoever you are free to come and go. In the green lighting, a narrow, mustilled face suddenly appeared at the top of the arch, gazing upside down at them. Ghislaine jumped. Hey, I know you. You're one of the ferrets I helped earlier. What you doing down here? Ghislaine sent a look to Cypra, who only grimaced. It's a long story. Where's your brother? Holding me. How else could I be hanging like this? Ghislaine shook his head. Never mind. What are you two doing here? Hold on. Hold me. The muffled voice shot back. You're too fat from eating. You're slipping. You drop me in the water and I'll... One ferret right after the other splashed into the narrow inlet. Coughing and sputtering, the smaller one shoved his sibling. Now we're all wet. Ghislaine bobbed his head. There are worse things that could happen right now. Like what? Aw, look, you made me drop my necklace. The smaller ferret dove into the water, running his paws along the bottom. Surfacing a moment later, he spat out seawater. Thanks a lot, Renil. I almost lost our only trace of Uncle Bodage. Wasn't my fault, Talus. You should have held me tighter. You shouldn't be so heavy. Wait! The bickering ferrets froze, glancing sidelong towards Cypra. The squirrel held an outstretched paw. Let me see that necklace. Talus narrowed his eyes. Why? You have something to trade? Because I'm not parting with it. Cypra's expression widened into a grimace. Please, just a look. You're going to take it. We're not dumb. Ghislaine swallowed. Please? Why? Ranil snorted. You helped us out. Just let them take a look. Talus slowly held out the dangling possession forward. In the dim lighting, Ghislaine could see one side was made of a dark translucent stone, the other a metallic pendant. Cypra gingerly took it from Talus's paw. You two might want to step aside. The ferret defiantly held his ground. Now you're going to run with it. Ghislaine pushed Talus into the arch support, holding him firmly. I'll stay here if it makes you feel better. Cypra? The squirrel suddenly shoved the object on the necklace into the crosshilt. Charging as fast as he could through the water, he started to glow blue, holding the crosshilt out. Stand aside. The otter suddenly flew from the water into the air. Twin orbs appeared ahead of him, carrying him high. The green light, grasping into the crosshilt, suddenly brightened. Ghislaine barked. Get down! A booming roar filled the air. Momentarily blinding, a massive ball of flame erupted, the heat shock wave throwing the 3 young ones over. Ghislaine instinctively ducked under the water, paws over his head. Then there was silence. Waiting a couple of heartbeats, Ghislaine slowly rose from the inlet, staring into the haze that fleetingly hovered in the night sky over the graying horizon. Cypra? Thor? What just happened? The water several paces away started to light. Thor suddenly breached the surface, gripping the glowing crosshilt in front of him. The trap is destroyed. We are safe. How did you change so fast? One of your new friends had the Attila here this whole time. It alone had the power to contain the explosion long enough to make a safe distance. But I thought the Attila here was on some island? Thor and Ghislaine eyed the awestruck ferrets. Ranil pointed to Talus. Our uncle gave it to him. He used to be a sailor. Ghislaine nodded. The fates must have let him find it, so that we could get out of the trap. Thor cupped his head. The fates have done stranger things. Talus, I must make a trade with you for this necklace ornament. The smaller ferret only rolled his eyes back in his head, collapsing into his brother's ready arms.
Thanks to everybody for being here and to the library for everything they've done. Is this on and working? Yes? The book that I'm going to read from is called Inside the Animal, the Collected Red Riding Hood Poems, and so poems. And it's a reimagining and retelling of the Red Riding Hood tale. And so I'll just read 3 short poems from it. I'll read the opening poem. This is called Red Riding Hood Opens the Door. There is a house. Inside the house, a wolf. Inside the wolf, an old woman. Inside the old woman, an empty womb, glittering music, teeth, hair, fists, bulb of brain blooming intricate. Inside the wolf, inside the woman, there is a deep metal fear of bodies shattering into fragments, shimmering back into syntax. Meanwhile, the old woman's daughter packs a basket, dresses her daughter in a red cape, directs her into a green-black forest where there is no God, only a story, wild roses always breathing soft warnings. She reaches the house, opens the door, a dark mouth opens, and she knows again the dazzling pain of self in all its forms, our disastrous needs. The story is so heavy. Inside a small house, a wolf weeps, the womb aches. And this is told in Red Riding Hood's voice. This is called Red Riding Hood's Wish. I'm no angel. I'm not dead. I live inside a little nest of words, and I live inside your head, my story living and living. The day wolf swallowed me whole. I'm a lesson. I'm the silly girl who didn't listen to her mother, talked to a stranger, and got her grandmother eaten. Wolf swallowed us both, and our twin bodies locked fast in the wet black grave. Sometimes we stay this way forever, rock together in the dark. Sometimes a woodsman hears me scream and comes racing to see the bulge of our limbs in Wolf's sleeping body. He slits Wolf's skin with scissors. We pop into the air, purple-faced, gulping, then fill his belly with cold stones and sew him up. When it happens this way, Wolf drowns in the well every time. We laugh and watch his eyes widen in the tomb of water. But listen, just once, I want to be the girl who doesn't have to die. And I don't want to be saved. I don't want to watch Wolf drown, don't want to sew his hide into a rug or a coat. I don't want to tote his head on a stick through town. I don't want to watch little girls read my story and shake their heads as if they know, as if I deserve to travel forever through this brutal world alone. And this final one I'll read is about the wolf, and I didn't want my wolf to just be a one-dimensional character, so this wolf is has a tender side to him. He's also violent, but this is called Wolf Wears Red Riding Hood's Cape. When the story is silent behind its hard covers, Wolf slips into the cape, becomes a mind of clean wind. His clumsy paws arrange delicate shawls around grandmother's shoulders. Gently, he combs her thin hair. A wonderful sadness washes through him when he wanders in fields glistening bluebells, their heads bowed in reverence. He hears their soft prayers. For hours he labors with a paintbrush, watercolors, paints sunsets for grandmother, orange, purple, gold. She fastens his pictures high on her walls. He floats in a cold river, opens his eyes underwater, feels the pure ecstasy of distortion. He sleeps next to grandmother. In the dark, she tells him of baby Moses adrift in his tiny ark. Thank you.
We have about 6 minutes left for questions and answers, and then we'll make our way over to the vaudeville room on the other end of the library for book signing.
Okay, so you guys.
As you've been writing, and think about the characters that you've created. I'm just kind of interested in hearing who your favorite character you've ever created is, and why they mean so much to you.
Start with Shanan and come this way.
I think my favorite character that I've created is a full-dimensional grandmother in the Red Riding Hood tale. So a lot of the poems that are in this book are about the grandmother, for the grandmother, in her voice, and she gets to have a new kind of a life. And I just thought that was really exciting to take an old character that's been, in a story for so long, and to change that character and to give them a new voice.
I'm gonna have to take a pass on this. I don't really make characters for fiction, so pass.
Well, I wouldn't say I necessarily created my characters, but of the characters incorporated in my book, so I think my favorite is actually Ghislaine, the younger one that I just read about. The young otter has a hard time focusing, hard time fitting into his home society, just trying to figure out what his purpose is, and I feel like a lot of us are kind of on that road somewhere. Just trying to figure out what it is we're supposed to do, and sometimes it ends up being a lot larger than life and we think we're ready for it.
So that's a hard question. I always say it's like picking a favorite kid, and some days I can do it, yeah. Some days I can do it easy. But other days it's hard. So I think probably my favorite character that I've created was the one that kind of got me published. It was Hash Brown Winters that came out over 10 years ago. And it was funny because that was never supposed to be published. It was kind of like a release. I was just writing that just to have fun. And in fact, the name came about because we were naming my oldest son. He's almost 18. So I started writing this 18 years ago. And we were trying to come up with names. And every name I came up with, my wife and my friends, they all thought it was a bad name. And then, no, we don't want that. Everything I said, no, you don't want that. I'm like, I don't know why I don't want that. That's what I want, you know? And I said, forget it. We're going to name him Hash Brown. And then I said, oh, that's a good name. And so I went home and I created Hash Brown Winters. And so he holds a special, I mean, that's in terms of writing, those are my Hash Brown Winters are my probably least developed. You know, it's my first published books. I think they're still fun, but definitely not my, I think I've gotten better over time. But yeah, there's a special place for Hash Brown just because that's the one that the publisher decided to take a chance on, and then it started my career, so.
I kind of mentioned earlier, I think this character in my epic fantasy series, his name is Arter Ben.
Yeah, I said this earlier too.
It was just a lot of fun. Oh yeah, and those are hardbacks. Hardbacks. Yeah, it's heavy. But it was fun because I had a chance to really spend a lot of time with this character. This is book 1 of 3. The other 2 come out. Well, they're re-releasing this book with a new cover in September, and then the 2nd and 3rd book will come out in October and November. And so that'll be the whole trilogy. So as you can see, I mean, I spent a lot of time with this character, kind of diving into his head. For me, yeah, loved that. Other questions?
How many projects are you guys normally working on at one time?
Right now, hardly anything. But right now I'm in between, I'm waiting for a contract, and there was some, it seems like it's happening. I just haven't seen the actual contract that I signed that I know I'm gonna get paid. So I'm kind of sitting there. You know, I've got ideas and I've jotted down a lot, and so 1. I should say that. That was a long answer to say 1.
I wrote these books in 1 year, and then I wrote this one, the sequel, and the second one of this in a year. So I was on 2 books a year, and then I wrote Magic's Most Wanted and the 3rd book of this last year. That was a lot. It was more than I could. I was trying to keep my head up above water.
You would never go to lunch.
No, we didn't do lunch.
That was
very
too
much.
much.
That was insane for a while.
You have to eat, man.
Yeah, so I did 2 a year, and two middle grades I feel like I could have handled, but throwing in epic fantasy, this one is like, for word count, like 225,000 words, and then a 70,000 word middle grade book. It was just about as much as I could do. I'm no Brandon Sanderson, that's all I'm gonna say. That guy can write like he's running out of time.
On average, 2 projects at a time, although there was one time when I had 4 going at the same time. I mean, it all depends on how creative I'm feeling.
I like to work on at least a few at a time. You know, I work in nonfiction and fiction too, so it feels like a totally different literary landscape, so I can escape to one or the other, and have a completely sort of refreshing experience rather than getting stale on one project.
I've been working on the same project for about six and a half years, and that's a poetry collection about my brother's death. And so that's been really difficult. And then, that's always sort of something I'm working on, or and I get stopped just because of the emotional, trauma that it causes. And then just try to write just a poem a week if possible. Maybe more than that. Lots of little drafts in my journal, which are about lots of different things, but just one major project, which is called the Obituary Addendum for my brother.
So thank you all, and